My son left a voice message meant for his wife, and what I heard left me speechless. My name is Harold Thompson, I'm 65 years old, and I never thought I'd be sharing this story with anyone. For 37 years, I've been a proud father. I worked double shifts at the steel mill in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, saved every penny I could, and built what I thought was a legacy for my family. I owned 3 rental properties, had a comfortable savings account, and most importantly, I had raised what I believed was a good man. My son Michael is 32 now. Married to Sarah for 8 years, they have 2 beautiful children, Emma, who's 6, and little Jake, who just turned 4. After my wife Margaret passed away from cancer 3 years ago, Michael and his family became my entire world. They moved into my house in the Lawrenceville neighborhood to help take care of me, as Michael put it. I was grateful. The house felt so empty without Margaret's laughter echoing through the halls. The morning of October 15th started like any other. The autumn leaves were painting Pittsburgh in shades of gold and crimson, and I was in my workshop in the basement, fixing an old radio, a hobby I'd picked up to keep my hands busy and my mind off the loneliness. The smell of wood polish and oil reminded me of better times, when Margaret would bring me coffee and complain about the noise I was making. I heard my phone buzzing upstairs on the kitchen counter. My old Nokia, yes, I still use one of those brick phones because they actually work, was playing its familiar ringtone. By the time I climbed the stairs, wheezing slightly from my emphysema, the call had gone to voicemail. The caller ID showed Michael, son. I smiled, thinking maybe he was calling to let me know he'd be home early from his job at the construction company. Michael had been working on a big commercial project downtown, and the hours were brutal. Sarah had been complaining that he was never home anymore, always stressed about money despite both of them working full-time jobs. I pressed the voicemail button and put the phone to my ear, expecting to hear my son's familiar voice telling me about his day. Instead, what I heard made my blood turn to ice. Sarah, baby, listen to me carefully, Michael's voice was rushed, almost whispering. I found the documents. Dad keeps everything in that old filing cabinet in his bedroom closet. The property deeds, the bank statements, everything. Sarah, we're talking about almost $400,000 in assets, plus the house. My hand started trembling. This couldn't be what I thought it was. I know we talked about this, but I'm telling you, it's our only shot. Dad's health isn't getting any better. The emphysema, the heart problems, honestly, I don't think he has more than a couple years left. And Sarah, I'm tired. I'm so fucking tired of pretending to care about this old house, pretending to be the good son. The phone slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the linoleum floor. I stood there in my kitchen, surrounded by family photos on the refrigerator, pictures of Michael's first day of school, his high school graduation, his wedding day, the grandkids' birthdays, and felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. I picked up the phone with shaking hands and replayed the message. The plan is simple, Michael's voice continued. We get him to sign over power of attorney. I already talked to that lawyer, Johnson, remember? The one who handled Mom's will? He said if Dad's mental faculties are in question, it's easier than we think. We document a few episodes, maybe he forgets to take his medication, leaves the stove on, stuff like that. Build a case. My legs gave out, and I sank into one of Margaret's old kitchen chairs. The same chair where she used to sit and help me balance our checkbook every Sunday after church. Once we have control, we sell everything. The rental properties first, they're worth about $250 combined. Then we put the house on the market. Sarah, we could be looking at close to $500,000. Enough to buy that place in Florida you've been dreaming about, start fresh somewhere nobody knows us. The message continued, and each word felt like a physical blow. I know it sounds cold, but think about Emma and Jake. Think about their future. Dad lived his life. He had his time with Mom, had his career, built his little kingdom. Now it's our turn. We've been playing house for 3 years, taking care of the old man, pretending we're one big happy family. I'm done pretending, Sarah. I want out of Pittsburgh, out of this life, out of everything. There was a pause, and I could hear traffic in the background. He was probably calling from his lunch break at the construction site. The beauty of it is, once we sell everything and move, what's he gonna do? Track us down? He doesn't even know how to use the internet properly. By the time he figures out what happened, we'll be settled in Tampa or Miami, living our real lives. My chest started tightening, that familiar crushing sensation that had been happening more frequently since Margaret died. But this wasn't a heart attack, this was something far worse. This was the death of everything I thought I knew about my son. I've been thinking about it, and honestly, maybe it's better this way. Dad's been depressed since Mom died. He barely leaves the house except for doctor's appointments. What kind of life is that? We'd almost be doing him a favor. He could end up in one of those assisted living places, make some friends, play bingo or whatever old people do. The casual cruelty in his voice was devastating. This wasn't the Michael I raised. This wasn't the boy who used to come running to me when he scraped his knee, who spent hours in the workshop with me learning how to use tools, who cried when we had to put down our old dog Charlie. Look, I gotta go. Johnson said he can meet with us next week to discuss the power of attorney paperwork. Just keep playing the loving daughter-in-law, okay? Bring him his coffee in the morning, ask about his day, all that bullshit. It shouldn't be much longer. The message ended with Michael saying he loved her and reminding her to delete the voicemail. I sat in that kitchen for what felt like hours, staring at the phone in my hands. The afternoon sun was streaming through the window, illuminating the dust particles floating in the air like tiny ghosts. I could hear the neighbor's dog barking, kids playing in the street, all the normal sounds of a normal day in a normal neighborhood. But nothing would ever be normal again. I thought about Margaret, how she used to worry that we were spoiling Michael too much. Harold, she'd say, you can't just give that boy everything he wants. He needs to learn the value of hard work, the value of family. I'd always brushed off her concerns, convinced that our love and generosity would create a grateful, loving son. How wrong we were. The front door opened, and I heard Sarah's voice calling out, Harold? I'm home. I brought you some of those cookies you like from the bakery. Sweet Sarah, with her warm smile and genuine concern for my well-being. The woman I'd come to think of as the daughter I never had. The woman who'd been playing a part, waiting for me to die so she could cash in on my life's work. Harold? Her voice was closer now, in the hallway. Are you okay? Your car's here, but you didn't answer when I called out. I quickly deleted the voicemail and slipped the phone into my pocket. When Sarah appeared in the kitchen doorway, I was sitting at the table, trying to look normal. But inside, I felt like I was drowning. There you are, she said brightly, setting a white bakery box on the counter. You look pale. Are you feeling all right? Did you take your medication this morning? The irony of her fake concern, knowing what I now knew, was almost unbearable. But I managed to nod and force a smile. Just tired, I said, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. Maybe I'll lie down for a bit. Sarah's face immediately filled with that practiced worry I now realized was all an act. Of course, Harold. You've been pushing yourself too hard lately. Why don't you rest, and I'll make dinner tonight. Michael should be home by 6. As I walked toward the stairs, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. I looked like I'd aged 10 years in the span of an hour. My face was gray, my eyes hollow. I looked like a man who'd just discovered that everything he'd lived for was a lie. That night at dinner, I watched my son cut his steak and tell us about his day at work, laughing at something Emma had drawn in school, helping Jake with his sippy cup. He was playing the role of the perfect son and father, just like Sarah was playing the perfect daughter-in-law. But I knew the truth now. I knew that behind those familiar eyes was a stranger who saw me not as a father, but as an obstacle to his dreams. A dying old man whose only value was the money I'd leave behind. The children chattered about their day at school, innocent and unaware that their father was planning to abandon the grandfather who loved them, who had college funds started for both of them, who read them bedtime stories and taught them how to fish at the creek behind our house. As I tucked Emma and Jake into bed that night, something I had done every night since they moved in, I wondered if Michael had thought about them at all when he made his plan. Did he care that they'd lose their grandfather? Did he consider that they might ask questions about why we never see each other anymore? Or was he planning to tell them I'd died? Lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling of the bedroom I'd shared with Margaret for 35 years, I felt a depth of betrayal I didn't know was possible. This wasn't just about money or property. This was about the complete destruction of trust, of family, of love itself. I'd worked my entire life to build something meaningful, something lasting. I'd sacrificed vacations, new cars, fancy clothes, all so I could provide for my family and leave something behind. I'd poured my heart and soul into raising Michael, teaching him values, showing him what it meant to be a man of integrity. And he was planning to throw it all away for a fresh start in Florida. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself. The worst part was that I'd have to keep pretending I didn't know. I'd have to smile at breakfast, thank Sarah for her fake kindness, listen to Michael's lies about his day, all while knowing they were counting down the days until my death. But as I lay there in the darkness, something else began to grow alongside the pain. Something harder, colder. If Michael wanted to play games, if he wanted to treat his own father like a mark in some elaborate con, then maybe it was time he learned that the old man wasn't as helpless as he thought. Maybe it was time Harold Thompson reminded his son exactly who he was dealing with. The game was far from over. Before we continue with Harold's story, if you're finding this tale as gripping as I hope you are, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything, and it helps me bring you more real, emotional stories like this one. Now, let's see what Harold does next. The next morning, I woke up before dawn with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The initial shock and devastation had crystallized into something much more dangerous, a plan. I made my coffee in the quiet kitchen, listening to the house wake up around me. Sarah's alarm went off at 6:30, followed by the sounds of her getting the kids ready for school. Michael's heavy footsteps on the stairs at 7:15, same as always. The man was nothing if not predictable. "Morning, Dad," he said, grabbing his travel mug from the counter. He even had the audacity to ruffle my hair affectionately, like he had when he was a teenager. "You're up early today." "Couldn't sleep," I said, which was true enough. I studied his face, looking for any sign of guilt, any crack in his performance. Nothing. He was good at this deception, probably had been for longer than I wanted to think about. "Maybe you should talk to Dr. Peterson about those sleeping pills again," Sarah chimed in as she rushed through the kitchen with Emma's backpack. "Harold, you need your rest." The concern in her voice sounded so genuine. If I hadn't heard that voicemail, I'd have been touched by her care. Instead, it made my skin crawl. After they left, Michael to his construction job, Sarah to drop the kids at school before heading to her administrative job at the university, I had the house to myself. Time to do some investigating of my own. I started with Michael's room. The room that used to be his childhood bedroom, now shared with Sarah and decorated with their wedding photos and the kids' artwork. I felt like an intruder going through their things, but then I remembered Michael's voice on that message, casual and cold as he discussed selling my life out from under me. In Sarah's jewelry box, I found something interesting, a real estate brochure for properties in Tampa, Florida. Beachfront condos starting at $380,000. Someone had circled several listings and made notes in the margins. Good schools nearby, one note read. Close to Emma's age group. So they'd been planning this for a while. Long enough to research schools for my grandchildren in a state 1,000 miles away. I kept searching and found more evidence tucked away in their dresser drawer. Printouts of Florida job listings for both of them. Sarah had highlighted several administrative positions at universities in the Tampa Bay area. Michael had researched construction companies, even printed out contact information for some. The most damning piece of evidence was a handwritten note in Sarah's neat cursive, dated 3 weeks ago. Timeline: power of attorney by Christmas, properties listed by February, house sold by May, moved by June before Emma starts second grade. They had it all figured out. Every detail planned, every contingency considered. Except for one thing, they'd underestimated the old man. I photographed everything with my ancient phone's camera, making sure to put everything back exactly where I found it. Then I went to my own filing cabinet and did something I should have done years ago. I organized my affairs to protect myself. My first call was to my lawyer, but not Johnson, the one Michael had mentioned. I called Patricia Martinez, a sharp woman in her 50s who'd handled some property disputes for me in the past. Patricia didn't know Michael well, which was perfect. "Harold, good to hear from you," Patricia said when I reached her office. "What can I do for you?" "I need to update my will and set up some protective measures for my assets," I said. "Can you see me today?" "It's urgent." "Of course. How's 2 p.m.? "Perfect." That afternoon, I sat in Patricia's downtown office, looking out at the Pittsburgh skyline while she reviewed my current documents. "Harold, I have to ask, is there a specific reason you're concerned about protecting your assets? Any family conflicts I should know about?" I'd prepared for this question. Let's just say I've become aware that not everyone has my best interests at heart. I want to make sure my grandchildren are provided for, but I also want to retain complete control of my affairs while I'm alive. Patricia nodded knowingly. She'd probably seen this scenario before, elderly clients discovering that family members were circling like vultures. "We can set up an irrevocable trust for the grandchildren's education and future needs," she explained. "And I'd strongly recommend changing all your passwords, updating your power of attorney documents with very specific limitations, and consider putting your properties in a trust that you control completely." "What about if someone tries to claim I'm mentally incompetent?" "That's exactly why we're going to document your mental acuity thoroughly today. I'll arrange for a cognitive evaluation by a licensed psychologist, completely legitimate, all above board. If anyone tries to challenge your competency later, we'll have medical and legal documentation proving otherwise." The wheels were already turning in my mind. "Patricia, hypothetically speaking, what would happen if someone obtained power of attorney through fraudulent means?" Her expression grew serious. "That would be elder abuse, potentially criminal fraud. We're talking about felony charges, Harold. Prison time." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious about my protections." Over the next 3 hours, we restructured everything. My properties went into a trust with me as the sole trustee. My bank accounts were protected with new passwords and additional security measures. Most importantly, we created a new will that left everything to my grandchildren in trust, with very specific provisions. If I died under suspicious circumstances, or if there was any evidence of elder abuse or fraud, every penny would go to a children's charity, and Michael would get nothing. Not 1 cent. "There's something else," I told Patricia as we wrapped up. "I want to set up a college fund for Emma and Jake, but I want it done quietly. Can you handle that without their parents knowing?" "Absolutely. We can set up educational trusts that the children can access when they turn 18, regardless of where they're living or what their parents' situation is." I walked out of that office feeling like I'd just put on armor. Michael and Sarah thought they were playing chess against a doddering old man. They were about to learn they were playing against someone who'd been fighting battles since before they were born. That evening at dinner, I watched my family with new eyes. Michael talked about his day, complained about his supervisor, asked me how I was feeling. Sarah served pot roast, Margaret's recipe, and chatted about Emma's upcoming school play. "Dad, I was thinking, Michael said as he helped clear the dishes, maybe we should look into getting you one of those medical alert systems. You know, in case you fall or have trouble while we're at work. The caring son, worried about his father's safety. If I hadn't known better, I'd have been grateful. That's thoughtful of you, I said. But I'm managing fine. I know. But Sarah and I worry when we're not here. Right, honey? Sarah nodded enthusiastically. We just want to make sure you're safe, Harold. Maybe we could also look into having someone come by during the day. Just to check on you. They were laying the groundwork already. Establishing a pattern of me needing help, needing supervision. Building their case for incompetency. I appreciate the concern, I said carefully, but I'm not ready for that kind of help yet. Michael exchanged a look with Sarah. I saw it clearly now, that quick, meaningful glance between conspirators. Of course, Dad. No pressure. We just love you and want what's best. After dinner, I retreated to my workshop in the basement. The familiar smells of wood and oil were comforting, but I couldn't concentrate on my usual projects. Instead, I sat in my old chair and planned my next moves. They thought they knew my routines, my habits, my weaknesses. Michael had grown up in this house, he knew where I kept important documents, knew my daily schedule, knew all my vulnerabilities. But there were things about me they didn't know. Things I'd never shared with anyone, not even Margaret. Before I'd met my wife, before I'd become a respectable steel worker and family man, I'd spent 2 years in the army, stationed in Germany during the Cold War. Nothing dramatic or heroic. I was a communications specialist, dealt with intelligence gathering and information security. But I'd learned things. Skills that had been rusty for decades but were coming back to me now. I knew how to gather information without being detected. I knew how to plan operations, anticipate responses, cover my tracks. Most importantly, I knew how to be patient and wait for the right moment to strike. Michael was planning to build a case against my mental competency. Well, two could play that game. I pulled out a notebook and started making my own timeline. I needed to document everything, every fake concern comment, every manipulation, every piece of evidence of their deception. I needed to build my own case, one that would destroy them completely when the time came. The next few days fell into a strange rhythm. During the day, while they were at work and the kids were at school, I continued my investigation. I found Michael's laptop password, Emma's name followed by Jake's birth year, not very creative, and discovered email conversations with Sarah about their plans. The emails were worse than the voicemail. They discussed me like I was already dead, debated whether to tell the kids the truth about why we'd never see each other again, even joked about how easy it was to fool the old man. Sarah had written, "Sometimes I feel bad about lying to him. He's actually sweet, and he loves the kids so much." Michael's response, "Don't get sentimental on me now. He had his life. This is about our future, our kids' future. Besides, he'll be better off in assisted living. He's becoming a burden anyway." A burden. 37 years of fatherhood, reduced to that. But I also found something else in those emails, doubt. Sarah was clearly having second thoughts. Her messages grew more hesitant over time, asking questions about whether there was another way, whether they were doing the right thing. Michael's responses became more aggressive, more manipulative. He was pressuring her, wearing down her resistance, convincing her that this was their only option for financial security. Maybe Sarah wasn't as committed to this plan as she appeared. Maybe she was just as much a victim of Michael's manipulation as I was. That gave me an idea for my next move. It was time to have a conversation with my daughter-in-law. The opportunity came 3 days later, on a Thursday afternoon when Michael had to work late on the construction site. Sarah picked up the kids from school as usual, but instead of staying busy with dinner preparations like she normally did, she seemed restless, distracted. I was in the living room, pretending to watch my afternoon news program, when I heard her in the kitchen, opening and closing cabinets with more force than necessary. The sound of someone wrestling with their conscience. "Sarah?" I called out. "Everything all right in there?" She appeared in the doorway, wringing her hands. Her usually perfect composure was cracking around the edges. "Oh, Harold." "Yes, I'm fine. Just trying to figure out what to make for dinner." But her eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying. This was my chance. "Why don't you sit with me for a minute?" I patted the couch beside me. "You look like you could use a break." She hesitated, then sat down heavily, keeping her distance but close enough that I could see how exhausted she looked. "Sarah," I said gently, "I've been thinking a lot lately about family, about trust. About how hard it must be for you and Michael, working so hard and still struggling financially." She looked at me sharply, and I saw fear flash across her face. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm not blind, honey. I see Michael coming home stressed every night. I see you clipping coupons, buying the store brands at the grocery. You think I don't notice, but I do." Her shoulders sagged with relief. She thought I was just making conversation about their money troubles, not digging deeper. "It has been hard," she admitted. "Michael's job, the pay isn't great, and with 2 kids, my salary from the university barely covers daycare and Emma's after-school programs." "You know," I said, watching her face carefully, "I've been thinking about updating my will. Making sure you and the children are taken care of if something happens to me." The change in her expression was immediate and devastating. Hope, guilt, and terror all flashed across her face in rapid succession. "Harold, you don't need to. I mean, we're not expecting." "Of course you're not expecting anything," I said soothingly. "But I'm 65 years old, Sarah. I have health problems. It would be irresponsible of me not to plan ahead." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Harold, can I ask you something?" "Anything." Do you ever feel like you're living a lie? Like everyone around you is pretending to be someone they're not?" My heart started racing, but I kept my voice calm. "That's a strange question. Why do you ask?" Tears started rolling down her cheeks. "I don't know who I am anymore. I used to be a good person, Harold. I used to believe in doing the right thing. But lately, I feel like I'm drowning, and Michael keeps telling me that desperate times call for desperate measures. This was it. This was the moment I could either destroy her or save her. And maybe, in saving her, save myself." "Sarah," I said carefully, "what kind of desperate measures are we talking about?" She looked at me with such anguish that for a moment, I almost forgot she'd been part of the plan to rob me blind. I can't tell you. Michael would. God, Harold, I've made such a mess of everything." I moved closer to her on the couch, close enough to put a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Honey, whatever it is, maybe talking about it would help. Sometimes when we keep secrets, they eat us alive from the inside." She was crying openly now, and I found myself genuinely feeling sorry for her. Whatever hold Michael had over her, whatever he'd convinced her to do, she was clearly tortured by it. "He has it all planned out," she whispered. "Every detail. And he makes it sound so reasonable, so justified. He says you'd be better off, that we'd be helping you by taking control of your finances, that you're not capable of managing everything anymore." There it was. The confession I'd been waiting for. "But I know you, Harold. I've lived with you for 3 years. You're sharper than men half your age. You remember everything, you handle your own bills, you take care of this house better than Michael and I take care of our own lives." I said nothing, just let her continue. "The worst part is the kids. Emma and Jake love you so much. They think you're going to be their grandfather forever, that we're all going to live in this house and be a family. And Michael wants to. He wants to take them away and never look back. Take them where? I asked, though I already knew. Florida. We've been looking at houses online, researching schools. Michael has it all figured out. Sell your properties, sell this house, use the money to start over somewhere new. And what about me in this plan? She sobbed harder. He says you'll be fine in assisted living. That you'll make friends, be around people your own age. But Harold, I've visited those places. I know what they're like. You'd hate it. You'd wither away and die, and it would be my fault. The raw honesty in her voice was unexpected. This wasn't the calculated manipulator I'd imagined. This was a woman who'd been manipulated herself, pressured into something that went against every instinct she had. Sarah, I said quietly, look at me. She raised her tear-stained face to mine. I know. The color drained from her face completely. What? I know about the plan. I know about the power of attorney, the timeline, the properties in Tampa you've been looking at. I know everything. She started hyperventilating, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Oh God, Harold, I'm so sorry. I never wanted, it wasn't my idea. Michael said. Sarah, breathe. Just breathe. It took several minutes for her to calm down enough to speak coherently. When she did, the words came pouring out like water from a broken dam. It started 6 months ago, when Michael found out about your savings account. He saw a bank statement on your desk and couldn't believe how much money you had. He started talking about how unfair it was that you were sitting on all this wealth while we were struggling to pay for Emma's piano lessons. She wiped her nose with a tissue I handed her from the side table. At first, he just said maybe you could help us out more, maybe co-sign for a better car or help with the kids' college funds. But then it escalated. He started talking about what would happen when you died, how we'd inherit everything anyway, so why shouldn't we have access to it now when we actually needed it? And you went along with it? I tried to talk him out of it. I told him it was wrong, that you'd been nothing but generous to us. But Harold, you don't know what Michael's like when he sets his mind on something. He can be persuasive and persistent. He wore me down day after day, week after week. She was shaking now, the full weight of what she'd been part of crashing down on her. He made me feel like I was being selfish for wanting to stay here, like I was denying our children a better future just because I was too sentimental to do what needed to be done. He said you were getting older anyway, that your health was declining, that we were just accelerating the inevitable. But you never believed that. No. God, no. Living with you these 3 years has been. Harold, after my parents died in that car accident, you've been more of a father to me than my own dad ever was. You taught me how to change the oil in my car, you helped Emma with her math homework when I couldn't figure it out, you stayed up all night with Jake when he had that terrible fever last winter. The irony was devastating. While Michael had been plotting to abandon me, Sarah had been falling in love with the family she'd never had. But Michael kept pushing, kept insisting this was our only chance at financial security. And I love my husband, Harold. I thought if I could just go along with it, maybe once we had the money and the fresh start, he'd go back to being the man I married. Sarah, I need you to understand something. What Michael is planning isn't just morally wrong, it's criminal. Elder abuse, fraud, potentially kidnapping if he takes my grandchildren away without my permission. Her face went white again. Criminal? He could go to prison. You could go to prison. And Emma and Jake could end up in foster care. The reality of the situation hit her like a physical blow. She doubled over, clutching her stomach like she was going to be sick. What have I done? What have I done? I let her cry for a few more minutes, then made a decision that would change everything. Sarah, I'm going to give you a choice. one chance to make this right. She looked up at me through her tears. You can continue with Michael's plan, and when it all comes crashing down, because you'll face the consequences together. Or you can help me stop him before he destroys this entire family. How? By telling me everything. Every detail of the plan, every conversation you've had, every step he's planning to take. Help me build a case that will protect all of us, you, me, and most importantly, Emma and Jake. She was quiet for a long time, wrestling with the biggest decision of her life. Betray her husband to save her children and herself, or stay loyal and watch everything burn. Finally, she looked up at me with determination I hadn't seen from her before. What do you need to know? For the next hour, Sarah told me everything. The timeline was even more accelerated than I'd thought. Michael was planning to have me declared incompetent within the next month, before Christmas. He'd already scheduled appointments with a doctor who owed him a favor from a construction job, someone who might be willing to sign off on cognitive decline that didn't actually exist. The meeting with Johnson, the lawyer, was scheduled for next Tuesday. Michael planned to bring me along, ostensibly for estate planning, but really to sign documents I wouldn't fully understand until it was too late. But the most chilling revelation was what Michael planned to do if I resisted. He's been researching memory care facilities, Sarah whispered. Places where they can commit someone against their will if there's documentation of mental decline. He thinks if he can get me to back up his claims about your forgetfulness, your confusion, he can have you institutionalized. And you were going to go along with that? God help me, Harold, I think I might have. He's very convincing when he wants to be. He makes you feel like you're crazy for questioning him, like you're the one being unreasonable. I recognized what she was describing. Psychological manipulation, gaslighting. Michael had been using these tactics on both of us, probably for longer than either of us realized. Sarah, there's something I need you to do, and it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. What? I need you to go back to pretending. Act like nothing has changed, like you're still on board with the plan. But from now on, you're going to be working for me. You're going to be my eyes and ears, documenting everything Michael does and says. You want me to spy on my own husband. I want you to save your family. Because Sarah, if we don't stop Michael, he's going to destroy all of us. You, me, Emma, Jake, everyone will suffer for his greed. She nodded slowly, understanding the weight of what I was asking. There's something else, I continued. I've already taken steps to protect my assets. Michael's plan is going to fail regardless. But if we handle this right, we can minimize the damage to everyone involved. What kind of steps? I told her about my meeting with Patricia Martinez, about the trust fund I'd set up for the grandchildren, about the safeguards I'd put in place. Her relief was palpable. So the kids will be okay? No matter what happens. The kids will be more than okay. Emma and Jake will have their college educations paid for, and trust funds that will set them up for life. But only if we can keep Michael from doing something that lands him in prison. We heard his truck pulling into the driveway then, the distinctive rumble of the old Ford he'd been driving since high school. He's home, Sarah said, panic creeping back into her voice. Remember, I told her, act normal. You're still on board with the plan. Can you do that? She took a deep breath and nodded. I can do that. Michael walked through the front door a few minutes later, tired and dirty from his day at the construction site. He kissed Sarah hello and asked about the kids, who were upstairs doing homework. How's your day, Dad? He asked me, settling into his chair with a beer. Oh, you know. Same as always. Sarah and I were just chatting about family stuff. Michael glanced at Sarah, who managed to smile and nod. Actually, she said, and I held my breath, Harold was telling me about wanting to update his will. Maybe it would be good for all of us to sit down and talk about the future. Michael's eyes lit up. He thought his wife was setting the stage for their plan. That's a great idea, honey. Dad, we should definitely talk about making sure everything's in order. You know, for peace of mind. I'd like that, I said. Maybe we could meet with a lawyer next week? Actually, I know a guy. Johnson. He helped us with some paperwork when we bought the car. Real straight shooter, and he knows elder law. The same lawyer Sarah had already told me about. Everything was proceeding exactly as Michael had planned. Except now, I was the one setting the trap. That sounds perfect, I said. Why don't you set up an appointment? As Michael went upstairs to shower and change, Sarah caught my eye across the kitchen. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something else. Determination. For the first time since I'd heard that voicemail, I felt like I might actually win this war. The weekend passed in a surreal blur of family normalcy. Saturday morning pancakes, Emma's soccer game, Jake's tantrum over bedtime, all the ordinary moments of family life, except now I was watching it all through the lens of betrayal and deception. Michael was in an unusually good mood, whistling while he fixed a loose board on the back porch, playing catch with Jake in the yard. He thought he was on the verge of his big score, probably already mentally spending the money from my properties. Sarah, on the other hand, was walking a tightrope of guilt and fear. I caught her watching Michael with a mixture of love and horror, like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. Every fake smile she gave me, every staged moment of concern for my well-being, I could see was eating her alive. Sunday evening, Michael made the call to Johnson the lawyer. Tuesday at 10 a.m., he announced after hanging up. Johnson can see all three of us. Dad, you'll want to bring any important documents, property deeds, bank statements, insurance policies, that sort of thing. Of course, I said. I'll gather everything tonight. What Michael didn't know was that I'd already called Johnson myself on Friday, using an old contact from my steel mill days, a guy who'd used Johnson for a workers' comp case. I'd learned some interesting things about Mr. Johnson's practice. Turns out he specialized in what he called family asset management, a euphemism for helping people get control of elderly relatives' money. He'd been investigated twice by the state bar for questionable practices but had never been formally sanctioned. Exactly the kind of lawyer a man like Michael would gravitate toward. I'd also arranged for Patricia Martinez to be available by phone during our meeting, and I'd prepared a little surprise that would expose everyone's true motives. Monday night, I couldn't sleep. I spent hours in Margaret's old rocking chair by the bedroom window, looking out at the street where I'd lived for 35 years, where I'd raised my son, where I'd thought I'd die peacefully surrounded by family. At 3 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. Sarah appeared in my doorway, wrapped in her bathrobe. Harold? I saw your light was on. Are you okay? Just thinking, I said. Big day tomorrow. She came into the room and sat on the edge of Margaret's side of the bed, something she'd never done before. Harold, I'm scared. What if something goes wrong tomorrow? What if Michael realizes what we're doing? Sarah, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? She nodded, but I could see the terror in her eyes. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay. Do you love him? Really love him, not just the man you married, but the man he is now? She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands folded in her lap. I love the father of my children, she finally said. I love the man who held Emma when she was born, who taught Jake how to ride his bike. But this person he's become. Harold, I don't even recognize him anymore. It's like he's been replaced by someone else, someone cold and calculating and selfish. When did it start? The change? After your wife died, I think. Margaret's funeral was when I first saw it, this look in his eyes when the lawyer read her will, when he realized how much money you had. It was like a switch flipped. That hit me hard. My wife's death had revealed my son's true nature. Sarah, tomorrow is going to be difficult. Michael is going to ask you to back up some lies about my mental state. Are you prepared for that? I won't do it. I can't. You might have to, at least initially. Let him think you're still on his side until the right moment. Can you handle that? She nodded, but I could see her hands shaking. Tuesday morning arrived cold and gray, typical Pittsburgh weather in late October. Michael was up early, dressed in his best shirt and tie, the same outfit he'd worn to Margaret's funeral. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Ready for this, Dad? He asked as we got into his truck. Sarah was already in the passenger seat, pale but composed. Ready as I'll ever be, I said. Johnson's office was in a shabby building downtown, the kind of place that screamed cut-rate legal services. The man himself was exactly what I'd expected: mid-50s, cheap suit, the predatory smile of someone who made his living off other people's misfortunes. Harold. Great to finally meet you, he said, pumping my hand with false enthusiasm. Michael's told me so much about you. Please, sit down. Can I get you coffee? Water? The office was designed to look impressive to people who didn't know better: fake leather chairs, certificates on the wall from diploma mills, a bookshelf filled with legal volumes that looked like they'd never been opened. Now then, Johnson said, settling behind his desk, Michael tells me you're interested in some estate planning, making sure your affairs are in order. That's right, I said. I want to make sure my family is taken care of. Excellent, excellent. Now, at your age, Harold, and with your health concerns, it's very wise to think about these things. Michael mentioned you've been having some memory issues lately. I glanced at Michael, who was nodding encouragingly. Nothing major, I said. Just the usual senior moments. Of course, of course. Very normal. But it does make it important to get things documented while you're still fully capable. Now, one thing I always recommend for clients in your situation is a comprehensive power of attorney. Gives your family the ability to help manage your affairs when you need it. He slid a thick stack of papers across the desk. Just a formality, really. Gives Michael and Sarah the legal authority to help with your banking, property management, that sort of thing. I picked up the documents and pretended to read them, but I'd already reviewed identical papers with Patricia Martinez. These weren't just power of attorney forms, they were comprehensive asset transfer agreements that would give Michael complete control over everything I owned. This seems very extensive, I said slowly. Well, you want to be thorough, Johnson said. Better to have too much protection than too little, right, Michael? Absolutely, Michael said. Dad, we just want to make sure we can help you when you need it. Of course, I said. But before I sign anything, I'd like to call my own lawyer. Just to make sure I understand everything. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Johnson's smile became strained. Harold, that's really not necessary. This is all very standard. I insist, I said, pulling out my phone. Patricia, are you available? I have some documents I'd like you to review. Michael looked like he was going to be sick. Dad, you don't need to involve another lawyer. Johnson knows what he's doing. I'm sure he does, I said. But humor an old man, would you? Patricia was on speakerphone within minutes. Harold, I'm here. What do you have? I read the key provisions of Johnson's documents aloud, watching Michael's face grow paler with each clause. Stop, Patricia's voice cut through the room like a knife. Harold, do not sign those documents under any circumstances. What you're describing isn't a power of attorney, it's a complete asset transfer with no safeguards or limitations. Johnson was sweating now. Now hold on, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Patricia continued. These documents would strip Harold of all legal control over his assets immediately upon signing. This is elder abuse, plain and simple. Patricia, I said calmly, I'm going to put you on hold for a moment. I think my family and I need to have a conversation." The silence that followed was deafening. Michael was staring at me like he'd seen a ghost. Sarah was looking between her husband and me, her face a mask of barely controlled panic. "Michael," I said quietly, "would you like to explain to me what's really going on here?" "Dad, this is all a misunderstanding." "Johnson, tell him." "Actually," I interrupted, "let me tell you what's going on. You've been planning to defraud me out of everything I own. You've been documenting fake evidence of mental decline, planning to have me declared incompetent, and then steal my life's work so you can run away to Florida and start over." Michael's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "I know about the Tampa real estate listings. I know about the timeline. I know about your plan to put me in a memory care facility against my will. I even know about the fake doctor you've lined up to testify about my supposed cognitive decline. How do you?" "Because your wife told me everything." Michael spun around to look at Sarah, who was now openly crying. "Sarah?" His voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "Michael, I couldn't go through with it. He's been nothing but good to us, and you wanted to destroy him for money. Money we don't even need if we just learn to live within our means." "You betrayed me," Michael said, his voice filled with venom. "You fucking betrayed me for him." "No," Sarah said, standing up. "You betrayed me. You turned me into someone I don't recognize, someone who would steal from a man who loves us. You betrayed our children by planning to take away their grandfather. You betrayed everyone who ever trusted you." Michael lunged toward her, and for a moment I thought he might actually hit her. Instead, he pointed a shaking finger at her face. "You have no idea what you've done. We had a chance at a real life, and you threw it away for what? Sentiment? Loyalty to him?" "I threw it away for my soul," Sarah said quietly. "Something you apparently sold a long time ago." Johnson was frantically trying to pack up his papers. "I think maybe we should reschedule this meeting." "No," I said firmly. "We're going to finish this right now. Patricia, are you still there?" "I'm here, Harold. I want to file a formal complaint against Mr. Johnson with the State Bar Association for attempted elder abuse and fraud." "Already in progress," Patricia said. "I've been recording this entire conversation with your permission, and I have everything we need." Johnson went white. "Now wait just a minute." "No, you wait," I said, standing up. I was done being the helpless old man. "You've built a career out of stealing from people like me, haven't you? Well, congratulations, Mr. Johnson. You just picked the wrong work." I turned to Michael, who was slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. "As for you, son, you have a choice to make. You can continue down this path and face criminal charges for attempted fraud and elder abuse, or you can come home with me and we can figure out how to fix this family." "There's nothing to fix," Michael said bitterly. "You've destroyed everything." "No, Michael. You destroyed everything the moment you decided your father was worth more to you dead than alive." The drive home was silent except for Sarah's quiet crying in the passenger seat. Michael stared out the window, his jaw clenched, radiating anger and defeat. But as we pulled into the driveway of the house where I'd raised him, where his children were waiting for us to come home, I realized that the real battle was just beginning. The question wasn't whether I'd won, it was whether there was anything left worth saving. The house felt like a tomb when we walked through the front door. Emma and Jake were in the living room, watching cartoons after school, their innocent laughter a stark contrast to the devastation that had just unfolded. "Grandpa." Jake ran to me with his usual enthusiasm, wrapping his small arms around my legs. "Did you have a good day?" I looked down at his bright, trusting face and felt my heart break all over again. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that his father just tried to steal his grandfather's life savings? "It was an interesting day, buddy," I managed, ruffling his hair. Emma looked up from her coloring book, immediately sensing the tension in the room. At 6, she was already too perceptive for her own good. "Mom, why are you crying?" she asked Sarah, who was still wiping tears from her eyes. Just grown-up stuff, sweetheart," Sarah said, trying to compose herself. "Nothing for you to worry about." But Michael had no such restraint. The moment we were inside, he exploded. "You want to know why Mom's crying, Emma? Because Grandpa just destroyed our family. Because he doesn't trust us, doesn't care about our future, only cares about his precious money." "Michael, stop," Sarah said sharply. "Don't involve the children." "Why not? They're going to find out eventually. Dad made sure of that." I watched my grandchildren's faces crumple with confusion and fear. This was exactly what I'd been trying to prevent. "Emma, Jake," I said gently, "why don't you go play in your rooms for a little while? The grown-ups need to talk." "But Grandpa," Emma started. "Go on, sweetie. Everything's going to be okay." After they reluctantly trudged upstairs, Michael turned on me with a fury I'd never seen before. 20 years, Dad. 20 years I've been the perfect son. I moved back to this goddamn city after college when I could have had a job in Denver. I gave up my dreams of traveling, of seeing the world, to stay close to you and Mom. I moved into this house when Mom got sick, took care of her when she was dying, held your hand at her funeral. His voice was rising, years of resentment pouring out. "And what do I have to show for it? A dead-end construction job, a house I can't afford, kids I can barely provide for. Meanwhile, you're sitting on a fortune, hoarding money like some kind of dragon." "Michael," I said quietly, "I never asked you to sacrifice your dreams for me." "Bullshit. Everything was about family duty, family loyalty. Take care of your parents, Michael. Family comes first, Michael." "Well, I did my duty, and where did it get me?" Sarah was shaking her head in disbelief. "Michael, listen to yourself. Harold never forced us to move in here. He offered to help when we were struggling with the mortgage on our apartment. He's been nothing but generous." "Generous?" Michael laughed bitterly. "He gives us scraps while sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars. You call that generous?" "I call it his money," Sarah shot back. "Money he earned, money he saved, money he has every right to do whatever he wants with." I watched this argument play out, seeing clearly how deep Michael's sense of entitlement ran. In his mind, my money had always been his money, just temporarily out of his reach. "Son," I said, trying one last time to reach him, "it was never about the money. If you'd come to me, talk to me about your financial struggles, I would have helped. I've always been willing to help." "Help?" Michael's voice dripped with disdain. "You mean more loans I'd have to pay back? More lectures about fiscal responsibility and living within my means? No, thanks. I wanted what was rightfully mine. But it wasn't rightfully yours, Michael. It was never yours." That's when he said the words that killed whatever love I had left for him. It should have been mine when that cancer-ridden bitch finally died. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah gasped and took a step away from her husband, as if she couldn't stand to be near him. I felt something inside me die, the last vestige of hope that my son was still salvageable. "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" "Get out of my house. Now. Dad, Now." I roared with a voice I didn't know I still had. "Get your things and get out. You are not welcome in this house anymore." Michael looked around wildly, as if he couldn't believe this was happening. "You can't kick me out. This is my home too. I've lived here for 3 years. This is my house. My name is on the deed. And you are no longer welcome here." "Sarah," Michael turned to his wife desperately, Tell him he can't do this to us." But Sarah was done protecting him. Michael, I think maybe you should go stay with your cousin Dave for a while. Until we figure out what happens next. You're choosing him over me? Your own husband? I'm choosing right over wrong. Something you apparently can't do anymore. Michael stared at both of us for a long moment, his face cycling through anger, disbelief, and finally, cold calculation. Fine, he said. But this isn't over. You think you've won, but you have no idea what you've started. He stormed upstairs to pack a bag, and I could hear him slamming drawers and cursing. Emma and Jake's bedroom doors were closed, but I knew they could hear everything. Another piece of their childhood innocence destroyed by their father's greed. 30 minutes later, Michael came downstairs with a duffel bag, his face set in hard lines. Sarah, you've got 24 hours to come to your senses. After that, I'm filing for divorce and going for full custody of Emma and Jake. We'll see how much your precious moral high ground is worth when you're living in a one-bedroom apartment and seeing your kids every other weekend. Sarah's face went white, but she stood her ground. Do what you have to do, Michael. He looked at me one last time. You know what the really sad part is, Dad? I actually loved you once. Before I realized what a selfish, manipulative old bastard you really are. And then he was gone, the front door slamming behind him with a finality that echoed through the house. Sarah collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. I sat beside her, putting my arm around her shoulders as she cried for the death of her marriage, for her children's future, for all the might-have-beens that Michael's greed had destroyed. What am I going to do, Harold? She whispered. He'll fight for custody out of spite. He'll try to take Emma and Jake away from me just to hurt us both. No, he won't, I said firmly. Because I'm going to make sure you have the best family lawyer in Pittsburgh. And because I'm going to do something I should have done years ago. I went to my desk and pulled out a folder I'd prepared earlier that week. Inside were documents Patricia Martinez had drawn up, papers that would change everything. Sarah, I'm deeding you half ownership of this house. It's yours, free and clear. Michael can't force you to leave, can't take the kids away from their home. You'll have security no matter what happens. She looked at the papers in shock. Harold, I can't accept this. It's too much. It's not nearly enough to make up for what my son put you through. But it's a start. Over the next few days, Emma and Jake asked dozens of questions about why Daddy wasn't coming home, why Mommy was sad all the time, why everything felt different. Sarah and I did our best to explain without destroying their relationship with their father completely. Daddy made some bad choices, Sarah told them. He needs some time to think about things and figure out how to be a better person. Is it our fault? Emma asked, her little voice breaking my heart. Oh, sweetheart, no, I said, pulling her onto my lap. This has nothing to do with you and Jake. You are both perfect, wonderful children, and Daddy loves you very much. He just lost his way for a while. Michael did file for divorce, just as he'd threatened. But his lawyer quickly advised him to settle when Patricia Martinez presented evidence of his attempted fraud and elder abuse. The judge wasn't sympathetic to a man who'd tried to steal from his own father. Sarah got primary custody, the house, and substantial child support. Michael got supervised visitation every other weekend and the knowledge that he'd destroyed his family for nothing. 6 months later, I was in my workshop when I heard a familiar voice. Grandpa? Can I help you with that? Emma was standing at the bottom of the basement stairs, wearing overalls and holding a toy toolbox I'd bought her. Of course, sweetheart. Come here and I'll show you how to sand wood. As we worked together, she chattered about school, about her friends, about the new baby bird she'd seen in the yard. Normal, innocent 6-year-old conversation that filled my heart with joy. Grandpa, she said after a while. Yes, honey. I'm glad you didn't go away. What do you mean? Mommy told me that some people wanted you to go live somewhere else, but you decided to stay here with us instead. I stopped sanding and looked at this beautiful, wise little girl. Emma, sweetheart, I will never leave you and Jake. This is your home, and I'm your grandfather, and nothing will ever change that. She smiled and went back to her pretend sanding, satisfied with that promise. That night, after the kids were in bed, Sarah and I sat on the front porch, watching the sunset paint the Pittsburgh sky in shades of gold and pink. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Stopping Michael, I mean. He was your son. I thought about it for a long moment. I regret that it came to this. I regret that I didn't see who he'd become sooner. But stopping him? No. I don't regret that. Even though it destroyed your relationship with him? Sarah, there was no relationship left to destroy. The moment Michael decided I was worth more to him dead than alive, he stopped being my son. What I did was protect my real family, you, Emma, and Jake. She leaned against my shoulder, and we sat in comfortable silence as the stars came out. Michael still lives in Pittsburgh, still works construction, still sees his children every other weekend under court supervision. He's never apologized, never acknowledged that what he tried to do was wrong. Sometimes I see him at Emma's soccer games or Jake's school events, and he looks right through me like I don't exist. That's fine with me. I've learned that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about choice, about who stands with you when everything falls apart, about who you can trust with your life and your love. Emma and Jake are thriving. Their college funds are secure, their future's bright. Sarah has gone back to school for her master's degree, pursuing dreams she'd put aside during her marriage. The house is filled with laughter again, with the sounds of children playing and growing and becoming the people they're meant to be. And sometimes, late at night when I'm sitting in Margaret's old rocking chair, I think about that voicemail that changed everything. The message that revealed my son's true nature and nearly destroyed us all. But it also saved us. It forced difficult truths into the light, ended comfortable lies, and showed us who we really were when everything was on the line. I kept the voicemail, by the way. It's still on my phone, a reminder of how quickly love can turn to greed, how family can become strangers, how the people you trust most can hurt you deepest. But it's also a reminder of something else, that sometimes, the most devastating betrayals lead to the most beautiful redemptions. That sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what's truly worth keeping. My name is Harold Thompson, I'm 66 years old now, and I've learned that family isn't about blood or obligation or inheritance. It's about love, loyalty, and the choice to stand together when the world tries to tear you apart. And in the end, that's all any of us really have. Thank you for listening to this story. If it moved you, if it made you think about your own family relationships, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything, and it helps me continue sharing these real, emotional stories that remind us all what truly matters in life. Until next time, cherish the people who truly love you and remember that sometimes, the greatest betrayals lead to the most unexpected blessings.